If you're thinking about buying a tumble dryer, but you're not really sure what to go for, you're a bit confused because there's so many models to choose from, then you're not on your own. So what I've done is I've come up with 10 things to consider before buying a tumble dryer, because hopefully by watching this video there might be some things that you think about that will help you to choose the right model. So let's have a look. So number 1 on the list, and I'd consider one of the more important things to consider, is whether you want a vented dryer or a condenser dryer. So this is a vented dryer, and this comes with a hose like this. This just expands and it normally connects around the back of the tumble dryer. There are some smaller tumble dryers where you have the connection on the front, normally on the 3 or 4 kilogram dryers, but on the full size dryers then you have the connection on the back, and that has to go through, normally either through a wall if you want a permanent outlet, or it does give you the flexibility that you can hang it out a window or a door. Some people don't bother with a vent going outside. Personally, I don't recommend that because you always need to try and get the air outside. You don't want it just going around in a garage or a utility or a kitchen, wherever you're keeping this. So that's the vented dryer, and the main thing is that you have to use one of those. With a condenser dryer like this one, then you have a drawer, and for the majority of the time the water will collect in the drawer, and then you normally have an indicator on the front that tells you when to empty it. Now for a lot of people they prefer this method. It's just a lot easier than having to have a hose hanging outside, but that's the main difference. So you've got either the condenser method or the vented. So number 2 on the list, and if you have decided to go along the condenser route, then you have a further 2 choices. You've either got the standard condenser dryer or you've got something called heat pump. The main advantage with heat pump, I won't go into all the technological difference between the two, but in a nutshell, the main advantage of heat pump is that it's a lot more energy efficient. Something you can find, a downside of heat pump, is it can take longer to dry. So especially if it's in a colder atmosphere, so if you have a tumble dryer in a garage, then it's not normally recommended to have a heat pump dryer out there. Especially during the colder months, then it can take a lot longer to dry. But if it is inside, so if it's in a house, like kitchen or utility area, then you will find that a heat pump can save a huge amount of money. And what I'll do is I'll just show you the energy label. So this is a Bosch heat pump dryer. This is one we do really well with. I'll show you the energy label of this one, and I'll compare it to another Bosch. It's unfair to compare it to the Indesit model, but I'll compare it to another Bosch 8 kilogram tumble dryer. So it's the same sort of specification. So this is the energy label. Each manufacturer and every tumble dryer has these, just to show you how energy efficient they are. So it just gives you the rating. So on this one it's an A++ energy rating. It's got 235 kilowatt hours per annum, and this is the equivalent model. So it's still an 8 kilogram, still a Bosch condenser, and that's showing that on that one it's 560 kilowatt hours, so it's more than double the energy consumption. So that's number 2 on the list, and for a lot of people they are going over to the heat pump. So despite them taking a little bit longer to dry, the cost saving as to the running cost of it is something that a lot of people are considering, because energy bills certainly are not coming down in price. So number 3 on the list will be the load size. Consider how many people you've got in the household and how many washes and drying loads you're doing each week. This can be an important factor, because what you don't want to do is to buy something like this. This is a 7 kilogram load, and have to cram it full every time you're doing the washing. Try and match up the washer and the dryer as to the load sizes. So if you go for an 8 kilogram washer, then try and go for an 8 kilogram dryer. There's nothing worse. Well, I mean, some people, they decide to go for a 10 kilogram washing machine and then a 7 kilogram dryer, and they realise why it's not drying efficiently. So consider the load size that you want. If you're a single person and if you're only doing a couple of washes and dryers a week, then something like a 6 or 7 kilogram will be okay. If you're a large family and if you're doing several washes a day, then I would recommend going for something a bit bigger, going into the realms of 8, 9 or even 10 kilograms. Now number 4 on the list is, do you want time drying or do you want sensor drying? Now what I mean by that is, on some of the basic dryers you just have a dial that rotates, and this is just a very simple function that you select the time that you want it to dry, and when it gets to the end, then it turns off. Normally the last 10 minutes is a cool drying, so the clothes don't come out too hot. So that's a very simple function, and that kind of idea has been around for a long time now. On most of the better tumble dryers, so as you go up to some of the better models, then you have something called sensor dry. What this means is this is a much more efficient way of drying. So you select how dry you want all of your clothes. So you've got different options like iron dry, cupboard dry. There's a lot of different options. I won't go into it in too much detail, but the advantage of sensor dry is that you select how dry you want the clothes. So it will come up with a time initially, but over the first sort of 10-15 minutes, the sensors in the machine will detect first of all the load size and the moisture content within the clothes, and it will adjust the time according to what's required. So there's a lot more functionality, and I normally recommend the sensor dry. One of the other advantages is you're not over drying the clothes. So apart from the energy saving idea with especially some of the better dryers like the heat pump, then with things like the timed drying, then you can over dry clothes. And also there's nothing worse than, especially if you've got it in a garage, that going out to the garage realizing that they're not quite dry because you've not had it on for long enough, then having to put it on for another 20 odd minutes. That can be very frustrating, whereas you know the performance of the drying when you've got the sensor dry should be perfect every time. Also, you can find that on a time dryer, then you can over dry as well. So if you're drying for an extra, even say 10-15 minutes, then that's really throwing money down the drain, because you're not having to dry it for as long, whereas with a sensor dryer then you wouldn't have that problem. So number 5 on the list is, does the tumble dryer have a display on it? Now I know with these dryers, they are at the basic end of the market. It doesn't have a display on it. I know you still know how long you've got left in the program because it is shown around the control dial, but on this one you have got a nice LED display, and with this will show you the display on here as to the time remaining in the program, and that will alter. You've also got a lot of other functions as well that are shown on here, but if you try and go for one with a display, then it can be so much easier than just going for one without the display. And having the display leads me nicely into the next one. So number 6 is, does the tumble dryer have a time delay? A lot of people now have things like economy 7 at home. That's where you get cheap electricity during the night. And to take advantage of that, because traditionally a tumble dryer can cost a lot more to use than a washing machine, so a lot of people use their tumble dryers overnight. To take advantage of the cheap electricity, ideally you want it to start in the middle of the night, and to do that you want to try and make sure that the tumble dryer's got a time delay built in. To do that, I mean on this particular one it has, and all you do is you just select that. So if I wanted it to finish in 10 hours, then just select that, press start, and then that's ready to go. So having one with a time delay, that's certainly something to look out for if you use cheap electricity during the night. The other advantage is if you go out to work and if you want it to go on while you're out at work, then what you'll find is that by having the time delay, so even if you don't put it on overnight, ideally you don't really want the clothes sitting there too long after it's finished before you come and empty it. You can find that the clothes can crease, but by having the time delay, so if you finish work at say 6 o'clock, you could get it to finish around that time, and then that's another advantage as well. Now number 7 on the list would be to look out for individual programs that may be useful for you. What you can find, I mean there's a lot of programs around here, again I won't cover all of them, but there might be something on here that could be of use to you. So on this particular dryer, this has something called Wool Finish, and as you can see it's a very quick program, and it's ideal if you just want to say finish off some of your woolens, or even if they've been in the cupboard for a while, you just want to give them a quick freshen up. This is a very gentle program that is designed purely for woolens, so it's things like this that can make a difference to you. You've also got things like sportswear, dedicated towel programs. So if you tumble dry a lot of towels, then this will dry in a certain way to sort of make them fluffier, which a lot of people like. So yeah, that's really one of the things to consider, to have a look at some of the specialised programs on the tumble dryers before you buy it. So number 8 on the list is all about locations. So it's a bit of a two-parter. First of all, the location. If you decided to go along the vented tumble dryer route, then consider about the location of the vent hose. Is it going to be through a wall? Does it need to go through a window, out through a door? Because if you're not really sure, and if it's very awkward to get the vent outside, then it may be worth going for the condenser type. Also on this one, so on the condenser dryers, consider the location of the drawer. On majority of tumble dryers now, the drawer is at the top left. That normally has an advantage because you're not having to bend down to empty it. On some of normally the cheaper condenser dryers, then the location of the water container is actually at the bottom. Now, as I say, they're normally on the cheaper ones because it saves the tumble dryer having to pump the water up to the top. So that's how they can save the money. But just consider where that is, because for some people that can be quite a pain, having to bend down. But what you can find is if you stack the tumble dryer, because some people will stack their dryer on top of a washing machine, then having the water container at the bottom has a huge advantage, because on quite a few tumble dryers now you do have the option that you don't have to use the drawer. You do get one of these with it. So this is a drainage hose. So rather than using the drawer, as I say, on some of the higher end dryers, then it does come with this. And what you'll find is that if you have got a water outlet, so if it's going next to, say, a washing machine, and if you've got the waste hose of the washing machine going into an outlet pipe, then you might be able to put this in as well. If you do have one of these, then it's normally quite easy to install. Around the back of the tumble dryer, there's normally a flexible hose. You normally just unclip that and then just put this in, and then just put this into the drainage outlet. So that's certainly something to look out for. Does it come with the drainage hose as well? Now, number 9 in the list of things to consider before buying a tumble dryer is, does it fit in? Look at the dimensions of the tumble dryer, because that could be number 1 on the list of things to consider. If you are in a very tight space where it's going to live, then that could be above and beyond anything else I've talked about so far. So just have a measure. You will find that things like the height, they're all pretty standard at around 85 centimetres. The width are pretty standard at around 60 centimetres. But the depths on tumble dryers can vary a lot. So on this one, for example, on this 7 kilogram dryer, you're looking at around 50 centimetres deep. And on this one, so on the 8 kilogram Bosch, then just from the back here to the front here, you're looking around 58 centimetres. So it makes a big difference. I know it's not just all about the load size, but clearly if you are thinking about going for a larger, say a 9, 10 or even 11 kilogram tumble dryer, then definitely look at the dimensions, because you'll find if it's going into say a standard 60 centimetre depth worktop, then sometimes it could stick out a bit, and if you've got drawers opening at the side, then it might not fit. So that's number 9 on the list. Just make sure it fits. Now, number 10 on the list is the cost of the appliance. I always try and leave it till last, because hopefully for a lot of people it shouldn't be the number 1 factor on the list as to what's the cheapest all the time. I always try and say to people, because we're talking about tumble dryers all the time, and it's the same with any appliance, that try not to go for the cheapest all the time unless you really are on a budget, because sometimes you can find by paying a little bit more you might get something that suits your needs a lot better. So I know I've left it till last, but what you can find is that tumble dryers do vary a huge amount in price, starting off, the sub £200, things like this. This is the Indesit vented dryer that we still do a lot of, compared to other ones like this. This is a Bosch heat pump dryer, so this is at the other end of the scale. For heat pump dryers, on the whole, you're normally looking at £450 plus, sort of going up. Some of the models can go into the realms of £800–900, and normally you find as you go up through the range they become more energy efficient. So if you are using the tumble dryer a lot more, then it can save on the electric bills. So that's really number 10 on the list, is the cost of the appliance. So I hope you found it useful, the 10 things to consider before buying a tumble dryer. Hopefully there might be one or two things in there that you may not have thought about beforehand. As I say, I don't want it always to come down to the cost of the appliance. I'd always recommend having a look. Things like the sensor dryer might be something that you've not thought about. Whether to go, if you were considering going for a good condenser dryer, then by paying a little bit more you might be able to stretch to the heat pump, and long term you will save a lot of money on your energy bills. So what I normally say is please give us a thumbs up, click subscribe on a YouTube channel, I always appreciate that, and leave any comments below. So if I have missed something, if there's something that you think I should have added to this list, then leave it in the comments. Also, if you have got any questions on tumble dryers, whether it's about some particular features or if there's a particular model, then again leave it in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.